Hello, everybody. It's Laura Eisenhower, and thank you so much for joining me today. I have a very special guest. His name is Matt Belair, and I had an interview with him. He actually interviewed me not too long ago before Dimensions of Disclosure, and really appreciated the time we shared together and the conversation we had, and started to explore him a lot more, and was just so blown away with what I discovered about the work that he does, the experiences that he's had, and the kind of service he is giving to humanity, and just his own personal journey and what he embodies and his skills, and just what he's come up with to really inspire the rest of us, how we can really be at our best and highest potential. So I'm going to just share a little bit. Matthew Belair is the host of the top-rated Master Mind, Body, and Spirit show, where he converses with leading experts on consciousness, personal development, and mind-expanding topics. He is the author of the best-selling book, Zen Athlete, and is a highly sought-after coach, consultant, and speaker. Matthew is an independent researcher and explorer who has meditated with monks in Nepal, trekked Mount Everest, trained with Shaolin Kung Fu Masters in China, and apprenticed under a Native American elder. He explores the edges of human potential, seeks truth, and shares his findings through his podcasts, speaking, and coaching. And before I jump into my first question, I've seen some of his videos, very profound athlete. I've seen the skateboarding and snowboarding videos, so definitely something I'm going to put in the descriptor so you guys can check out. And I have to say, he sent his book, Zen Athlete, and my son, I looked over at him today, and he has a bookmark very far into the book, and he's very excited about this interview and is really enjoying it so far. So thank you so much, Matthew, for joining me.
Hey, Laura, thanks so much for having me on the show. It's great to see you again. And yeah, I loved our conversation a few weeks ago, and a fan of your work and what you're doing too. So it's nice to be on the other side of the mic.
Oh, cool. Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. And I just want to give you a chance to share with us a little bit about your background, maybe even your childhood, in regards to how you developed your athletic skills and how that led into, or I don't know the timing of it all, but how that began to move into just the Zen aspect, or just the maybe spiritual aspect of it all.
Yeah, thanks. And it's interesting listening to the bio, because it's like just a little blip in time. But for me, it started as a kid. I just enjoyed martial arts. And at the beginning, my dad was a martial artist, so he was teaching me some things. But right away, it was about mind, body, spirit. It was about all three, that if I wanted to do these things that seemed impossible, that it had to come through some sort of force that wasn't just physical. Like I couldn't just punch my fist through, wood and do all these things that I saw as a kid. And so I began exploring that, doing martial arts at a young age, and learning from Bruce Lee, and looking at his philosophy, and then being an athlete, doing sport. And even when I was, I would say 7, 8, I was doing things like meditation and stuff like that, but I didn't really know what it was. I was just kind of emulating martial artists. And so when I got a little bit older and started to get a little bit more serious in skateboarding, just because I enjoyed it, and a little bit more of a serious martial artist and competing in different ways, I was looking at anything that could make me a better athlete. And so I was looking at meditation. I was looking at self-hypnosis. I was studying neuro-linguistic programming. Then I was curious about consciousness and enlightenment. So I was studying astral projection, lucid dreaming, consciousness in general, and discovering all these interesting things. And I thought this was normal stuff. I thought this was normal topics. And I didn't realize that I was strange until around 19 or 20, when, all my friends went to university, and I was really just contemplating, what was I capable of? What are humans capable of? Where are these superhumans? Do they exist? And where is that threshold between real and baloney, like, real and fake? So you look at somebody like Wim Hof, and that guy's for real. He's done all of these world records, and he's doing a breath pattern, and he shares with you how to do that breath pattern, but can do things physically that you would think would be impossible, and showing you how. And so when I trained with the Shaolin monks, that had been after I went to Whistler, and I snowboarded for 8 years there, still researching sports psychology and all these different techniques, experimenting from all the teachers that I could, and seeing what worked. But I wanted to go in person and see if it were real. And so that's when I did the travel and meditated with monks. I trained with the Shaolin Masters in China. And I discovered that they can do these things, that there are certain people on the planet that can do superhuman feats. And I tried to dissect how that's possible. And when I was there, what I realized, it was superhuman dedication. They had dent holes in the trees from poking the trees for years. And you would think, who the heck would do that so you could break stone with 2 fingers? It makes no sense. But they combined, qigong, which is meditation and using the force, or whatever, however you want to describe it, with incredible physical training over years of time. So I just realized, like, okay, if you had an idea or something that you wanted to pursue in your life and you had half of that dedication, you would experience probably pretty profound results even with half of that dedication. So I think that that's it in a nutshell, is just really exploring my own potential, human potential, and also asking questions like, how can this planet become peaceful? How can we figure out the issue of starvation? What systems are in control that make it this way? Because something seems off. I don't know exactly what it is all the time. Obviously, there's a lot of theories, and you gave some really interesting information as well. And so it's just desiring wholeheartedly to want to leave a positive impact here.
Oh, totally. And it just seems like it's where the multidimensional breaks through the veil to come into the body more, which we've been sort of limited from or kept from with some of these, programming. So it really does push the envelope to step into much more of a, higher DNA strand, it seems. I mean, that you're activating these higher abilities, because it's sort of like bringing the astral into the physical. Because I have dreams where I can do amazing tricks. I even thought that I was a really great skateboarder, and then I broke my arm thinking I could do a trick that I could do in the astral, and I haven't been able to integrate one into the other. And that's why it's so great what you do, because you offer those kind of teachings to kind of break whatever limits us. And I know it takes practice, but once that energy connection is there, do you find that once you're over the hump, the disciplinary part isn't so important? You're just you can just show up, put your board on, and you can just do tricks, or do you have to prepare every time?
It's a really good question, because I think that, with the way that your mind operates, maybe, and I don't know, I'm kind of assuming, is you have a big picture mind where you're thinking about possibilities, and you're able to explore new ideas. You might not accept all of them, but you're open to, like, okay, let me hear that idea of this expanding, thought. And many people, and most people, they're actually on the other side, where it's like, it's got to fit in this box. It needs to make sense now. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. Right. And so when you're exploring with the world of possibility and trying to bring it down, like in sport, trying to do something you haven't done before, pushing the envelope, pushing the edges of your capability, you're in the physical now. And so you're going to get a physical result. And so being able to merge those two worlds is a little bit of an art, and you can fail. That's why extreme sports is such a wonderful example. So to ground this point, I'll give you an example. I was coaching a freestyle motocross guy, and he linked me with one of his friends, and he called me and he said, "Hey, my friend Pat referred me to you. He says you're good. I just fell on a front flip on my motorcycle, and I want to land a front flip." And I was like, okay. So we had a call, and his mental game was pretty strong. And so, I refined a few ideas for him as far as perspectives. And I said, look, you don't have to read my book, but if you do, it'll help. You don't have to do the course that I have, but if you do, it's going to help, because your mental game is strong. You figured that out. You need to have a strong mental game to be crazy like those people. But I said, what you need to do is you need to visualize that trick every single day for an hour. When you know that you can land it, and there's going to be a point where then go do it. And so what he did immediately is he made the meditation. He visualized that trick an hour. 3 weeks later, he lands a front flip on his motorcycle. 3 weeks after that, he lands the world's first front flip heel clicker. 3 weeks after that, he lands the world's first front flip Superman on a friggin' motorcycle, doing the exact same process. Now you take it a step further, and the work that Dr. Joe Dispenza is kind of championing about the power of the mind to heal yourself. You're using, the placebo and meditation and your own thought to heal your body. Sounds absurd, but people are doing that. And so the difference was the catalyst, where the extreme sports athlete, Brody, his name's Brody Carmichael, really awesome guy in general too. He had a catalyst where if he messes that up, he could seriously injure himself.
Yeah.
Somebody who has a terminal illness, serious implications. And they're like, you know what, I'm going to try anything. I'm willing to explore this other modality because what do I have to lose? They have a catalyst. And so if you can prepare properly and then learn that edge of pushing your bounds, because maybe you want to do a 180 before a 360, right? And even when you do it, there is a chance that you fail, but you increase the probability dramatically through these practices.
I'm so glad you also linked it to health, because I know that, not everybody's going to be able to just jump into maybe a sport, but I like to look at the metaphor that when we look at the obstacles in front of us, if we view it like an athlete would, then we see the hurdles and we jump over the hurdles instead of sit there very intimidated by the challenges that are presented to us as a humanity with the cabal and these, control things. But, the view of a, athlete has that energy of a warrior that it's going to overcome. Do you find that a lot of people have severe injuries and because to some that would be a trauma. They might never want to do it again, but that's part of the art of being able to heal the self in the same way that they would want to attempt the challenge. The challenge can also come from rising above whatever injury might happen to keep them going, like, with your own life too. And I don't want to jumble too many questions all in one, but what kind of injuries have you had? And does that propel you to try harder, or have you stepped back almost intimidated, like maybe I just shouldn't do this anymore? Or what do you find as a patterning that seems like prevalent in the community of extreme athletes that you've gotten to know? However you want to answer that jumbled question.
Yeah, well, I like it because you kind of ask questions kind of how I do is when I'm talking to my guests, I'll throw a lot their way and I'm like, just choose from that what you would like to respond to. So I think there are a lot of really great themes in there. And one of them is just failure and how an athlete would perceive failure, or an individual, and rising to a challenge. And because failure is inevitable for everyone at every age, at every stage, even if you're successful to a degree. And so I think it's very empowering if individuals learn to see failure as something different, like as a part of the process. They redefine that whole thing as like necessary learning and means you're growing. Skateboarding is a great example because when you try to learn a kickflip, you fail probably 10,000 times. So when you recognize that failure is a part of the process. And so if you can understand that, and that's why sport is a good teacher. You can do it in any other way. Anything that you want to get good at. It could be art. It could be music. It could be dancing. It could be just running. It could be anything that you want to get better at, because each stage is going to present a challenge that you get to overcome. And it all starts by overcoming it in the mind. And then you're begin to create confidence because of you experiencing your own power to overcome, you just getting to that next phase. And so in the world, when you're trying to, do something you're more passionate about, overcome a limiting belief, whatever challenge you face in your home life, which we all do, whether it's financial or relationships or, moving towards a career that's more inspiring, or whatever it is, it's a challenge and it's a puzzle that you're moving towards and solving. And so if you have a passion that you enjoy, that you want to get better at, it's going to allow you to apply those same learning and technique to everyday life. And that's why I like martial arts, because it applies to everything. Bruce Lee said the same thing. He's like, martial arts taught me how to do every single thing in my life because it's all applicable. And the only reason I wrote Zen Athlete rather than Zen Life was because I can Trojan horse all of these self-mastery ideas through sport. They won't even recognize an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old won't even recognize that all of these tools can be applied to absolutely anything. But a kid wants to get better. They want to achieve. They want to hit the next goal. They want to know how to get better. They want to know how to push the edges. And it all starts in the mind, whether you want to land a new trick, become a better athlete. You're like, I hate this job and I would rather do a job I'm passionate about. Great. That's your first question. Then it starts the journey and the path. And it's not immediate. It's not a biohack. It's not a quick fix. It's not one meditation. It's a process of, you can be more diligent, but it's that consistent effort towards that same goal that's going to yield results. And if you have proven processes that help, like how do you overcome limiting beliefs? How do you even find which ones are there? How to install and use visualization? How to just use understand your own psychology and the way that you build and frame things, and give yourself a more powerful and empowering frame. Like if I'm going to go do a backflip, it's like, oh, I'm going to land on my head, or I hope I don't land on my head. It's a lot more empowering to say, you know, I have all the skills necessary to land this trick now. You know, I have all the skills necessary to overcome this challenge now, and find the resources to get to the next step. I can't get to the next step. So how we're framing things. So all of this is applicable everywhere. So I think I answered some of your questions,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I think, yeah, I think the big theme is fear, being really afraid to get to that next step and overcoming that next challenge. And what can we do to find the energy or the resources or perspective to take action towards what we want to grow towards?
Totally. And I just think it's such a powerful metaphor because it does apply to everything. Getting over heartbreak and being able to get back up again and be open to love. Just anything that throws us down, that, you know, we can get back up. If there's passion, there's a journey, and there's synchronicities that will provide it says I hope our connection is good. It just said unstable. But yeah, no, I think it's, you know, really, really powerful metaphor. I remember when I started skiing when I was young, and I just said to myself, as long as I know how to fall, then I don't have to worry about what it's just not being rigid when I fall was one of the things that kind of helped me, that I try and remember. And so and that's exactly what your book and what you're saying is about, is to overcome the fear is the preparedness and the meditation and the tuning into the self, and not, you know, paying attention to projections. I mean, did you have that a lot where your parents or your friends were like, that's nuts, don't do that? Or people were putting a lot of fear in your space that wasn't yours to begin with?
Yeah, well, so again, kind of when I was going through this, I didn't realize that I was strange. And so I think my parents were supportive in a way. My dad, I love him, and he has a very negative mindset. So there's a lot of stuff there that I needed to kind of overcome, and probably stuff the way I think now. And just, you know, he's the opposite of me, where it's like, it's got to fit in a certain box. And if he can't see how it would work, then there's no possibility. And so there's definitely fragments of that. But, you know, because I was presenting weird ideas to my friends through teenage years into adult years, they kind of just would give me the reply of like, just, they wouldn't know what to say. They weren't exploring those ideas for the most part. And so I definitely get a lot of blank faces growing up, and definitely a lot of people that don't understand. And it is challenging in a way, because once you kind of discover where you're exploring things that are not common, you question, what is it that you know? Is this stuff relevant? And why I didn't understand mostly why people didn't give a crap about big things like why people are starving to death. You know, that bothers me to this day. It's really upsetting. And we don't have peace on this planet. That idea really bothers me. And so why aren't we just even discussing solutions, right? Because that's where it's got to start. It's got to start with these discussions. So if I'm a little bit off and they want to kind of put down those ideas, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, I think that these are ideas worth exploring, worth spreading, and also worth encouraging in each other, looking at your friends and your family and community, and thinking about, hey, what are you working towards? You know, what would make your life better? How can I help you? And so all of those ideas, I think, that are important. And if you're weird, that's okay. And but it's 100% part of the process. Of all the people that I've interviewed, you know, there's almost 300 people now. I don't know of any guest that had an easy road,
Yeah.
that everyone was like, oh my God, you know, here's all the support. Because even if you have a loving and supportive family, there's going to be a lot of resistance coming from somewhere. But that's good, because that helps you know you're doing it for the right reasons, that you're on track, that it has a meaning for you, and that it's going to be challenging. If it were so easy, you know, everybody would do it and it would be no fun. You know, so I think part of this life experience is to figure out which way you want to go, and then earn it, because you know that you put that effort in, and it was something that's going to be meaningful and satisfying to you by your own design, not from default. To say like creating reality by default is just, you know, whatever the world is offering to you, that's what you take.
Yes. And leveraging that creates the strength you're talking about. It's like a weight pushes against you. We push back, keep pushing back to whatever tries to stop it, whatever, even if it has good intentions, no, you shouldn't, or you can't, you know, that's what builds muscle. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of, as you, I'm sure, have tapped into about yourself, a lot of, you know, past life mastery that you've brought in, and you're just a force to be reckoned with. And what I love about you is that it expands into so many areas. And to me, it's abnormal not to ask these questions and I just love the fact that it just spreads into all these, challenges that we face as humans. And so I guess my next question is, first off, I want to ask, with all your adventures and travels, are there any particular stories or adventures you want to share with us that kind of, and I don't want to put you on the spot because I know there's so many, I'm sure, but anything kind of stand out that would be interesting for us to hear? That
I got lots of stories.
I know.
I've been to like 30 countries, kind of like exploring these ideas and and sharing some. But I'll share a recent one that I had in Guatemala because I think it summarizes a little bit of what we're talking about the idea of preparation and also trust in spirit and flow state and things like that. And it's a ridiculous thing once you hear what happened. But so I was in Guatemala recently, and I went down to Guatemala because they were doing a Mayan fire ceremony in Tikal. And I guess they hadn't done that for years because there was a genocide in Tikal. I think I pronounced it Tikal. And they, I think, murdered, like, I don't know what the numbers, you have to look it up, but around 80,000 people in Guatemala, indigenous people that wanted to do ceremony in Tikal like they've been doing for years. And basically the government said no. So this ceremony was the first one in years. And I wanted to learn some history from a Mayan elder because I've been studying with the Mi'kmaq elder and also, Clifford Mahudi, a little bit from him, and trying to figure out, these guys all have a 20,000 year history. They all talk about ETs. They all talk about paranormal abilities, and they're like very grounded. This is in their oral history. And those three are linking up things without knowing each other. Clifford and David know each other now, but they didn't. So I went down and I showed up because I wanted to learn from Carlos and hear his stories and go to this ceremony. So anyway, while I was there, I decided to do a morning sunrise tour where you go through the forest, you go to this peak, and you get a sunrise over the lake. And in doing so, it was like 4 a.m, and we started to trek with a group of people into the Guatemalan jungle. And at one point, I look up, and it's just this beautiful night sky, and I kind of get a sense something's behind me. And so I look behind me, it's pitch black, I can't see anything, so I just keep going. And so then I keep walking, and then I hear footsteps behind me a few seconds later, and I turn around, and then there's a huge gun pointed to my face. It's like a Magnum or something, this big silver. I realize how big it is now. I was like, what was the guy doing with such a huge gun? So of all responses that could happen, I don't know why I chose this one. I didn't choose it. I didn't flicker through all the responses that I could do and then make this choice. My body just did this, and it's stupid, but it did it. I looked at the man with the gun. I know he had a bandana on. The gun was pointed right at my head a few inches away. There's a man to his right shoulder, a man on his left shoulder. I looked at them, all three of them, and then I turned around and walked away. I just completely ignored them. I looked at them, and then I just started walking. So I'm walking away, and I'm still not registering. Like, I know what's happening, but my body is on autopilot. So I walking away. It takes them a while to catch up to me. I hear the footsteps again. And they say something, so I turn around. The gun is in my face again. Man on the left, man on the right. Now he's saying, get down, get down. I basically, once again, ignore him because I'm the last in the group of people. It's me. Everyone's in front. I'm the last. So I ignore him for a second time. Continue to walk, and footsteps come up again. Now he's shouting, right? I turn around, the gun is at my head, and he's shouting, get down, get down. And I'm looking at him just waving the gun to get down. I look to the left now. Everybody's finally caught on to what's happening, and everyone else is on the ground except for me. I'm just staring at this guy like a dummy. And so he's now backed up, points the gun in the air, and shoots a bullet. So at this point, I start to slowly get down on my hands and knees, but I'm looking at this guy, and I'm looking at the two other guys. They come and they take people's stuff. I had learned after that, as I was staring at them, everybody got rid of their phones and their wallets, so they actually didn't even get anything. They get to the front of the line, they kick our guide, they shoot the bullet one more time in the air and walk away. And so after this is done, this is fine, this experience happened, I started to reflect on it. I was like, why the heck would I just ignore him? It makes no sense. But if there were certain other things that happened, maybe I would have attacked him. I don't know. But I've done a lot of martial arts and a lot of fighting. You usually don't want to fight 3 people. You usually don't want to fight a guy with a gun to your head. When I turn away from them, this is called a pattern interrupt. It's something so confusing. And a lot of fighting starts in the mind. You know, if your UFC is totally different, if you're going like in street, like there's all of these different tactics that throw people off, but a pattern interrupt is something confusing where it takes their intention and they have to go back inside and figure it out. So if you're listening to this podcast and you start to imagine a pink hippopotamus riding an elephant, you know, for you to figure that out, you have to stop and then go backwards into your mind to imagine those things. So that's why it took him so long to catch up to me. And so in that moment, it's like they talk about flow state or things like that. Maybe my head could have got blown off. Maybe it was stupid. Again, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend that, doing that. I don't know why that worked, but it was the response of the body. It wasn't a choice. I have been in other dangerous situations where there was a man with a machete and I confronted him. And then before that, there was a physical altercation with 3 people in a secluded jungle in which I ended up yanking one person out and launching another person physically, but then doing something, you know, then like basically saying, please stop, you know, please stop. And like, because there's women that got hurt in that scenario. So all of the actions make sense. But if it gets to the point where now my body recognizes I've got to go toe to toe, the response is going to be totally different. It's going to be automatic. But so that's a long-winded way to say that I understood that I was in a poor country, and I thought that at one point maybe there'd be a gun in my head. I would know that all they want is my stuff. I would know already that I shouldn't attack them because, you know, if they have a gun and there's 2 other people, there could be guys I can't see. Then I'm going to get killed from over here. And also in energy form, when somebody's going toe to toe and you turn the energy in the opposite direction, now they're following. So he's got to commit a murder and he's not going to get anybody's stuff. So logically, it doesn't make any sense. So I had actually thought through this scenario in mental preparation before. What happens in a foreign country if in different scenarios? And so in different times, I would use a different technique. So it is that preparation. And there's a really great book called The Gift of Fear, because you got to trust what your body's going to do. And so if my body was like full on attack this guy right now, it would have just launched and I wouldn't have thought about it. And I know this because I wasn't afraid. And I would have like felt my heart rate go up for what I was totally calm the whole time. I was not afraid at once. And I only say that because it's relevant, because when you are afraid, you act differently and it's a response that comes up naturally. So it's just a story of mental preparation. I do have a lot of other stories that like, you know, about some sort of more mind-blowing stuff, like a few UFO stories and a few like multi-dimensional experiences with Thoth. But that's just one particular one that's that long. But there's been a lot of interesting things on the journey, and I think that they come up randomly through the travels. Like even just training with the Shaolin monks, a lot of it's really grounded and dirty and friggin' hard. You know, like meditating for long periods of time is not glamorous. I spent 4 months, you know, in koala habitat, basically meditating all day. And most of the time I was like, what am I doing? Like, this sucks. And then over time, we get this really amazing insight or something that I know I can carry with me, and it makes it worth it. But a lot of these practices and training is hard, and it's difficult, and it's earthly, and it's challenging. And then you get these little blips of experience or something like that, that is like, oh, okay, that's why I did that, or there was a reason for this kind of thing. So I don't know if you want to ask a question or.
Oh yeah, no, I just, gosh, so much just inspires me to say certain things, some in the form of question, but just the importance of that, the body intelligence, the spirit body communication, the intuition. I mean, that's the same kind of thing when you're going down a rail, you know, on your snowboard, and everything's moving so quickly, you don't even have time to think anymore. But because of that preparedness, and, you know, the fact that the intelligence is so like instinctual that the monkey mind and the fear doesn't overtake the movement. And that's part of all this hard work that you've been doing to get to that state. And that's why you play such an important role. And I mean, I just consider it a really powerful leadership position without emphasizing it. It's like, look at what we're dealing with on a planetary level with these control forces and these reptilians and all these things that we think about and things that are off planet. And to have that level of preparedness and the synchronicities of the people you choose to speak to and how it all operates, it's so important to, you know, connect with somebody like you to remind the self to work on that integration, because we need that because there's so much separation from the body, so much mind control that separates the fullness of all that we really are. And so, I just have so much gratitude for you having, a life incarnation with that much dedication and commitment, because all the jewels of wisdom that you can pass on to somebody in just a moment's breath. But all the hard work that you've done to, inspire a growth period in people to begin to get into alignment, maybe not quite to the level that you've been able to do it, but enough to be able to protect themselves in this crazy freaking world, and hopefully inspire them to have a greater calling to be in service so that people can be taken care of and fed, and more justice can come about. I'm just going to open the door to make sure our connection's a little better.
Sure.
I guess my question.
What I wanted to kind of say to that too, and I really appreciate the kind words, is like, my understanding of how I'm experiencing life comes through a lens of martial arts and having these different things. And I think that, in that scenario, just people learning to trust themselves, trust their processes and going through experiences, and, have your own things. Like it would have been way cooler if I did a sweet ninja karate kick, who knows what could have happened, but it was interesting because I observed my body, and I've had 2-3 other near-death experiences. And one, I'll cut a really long story short, but at Mount Everest, when I trekked Everest, I got caught in a snowstorm. We had to trek up. We were the only ones going up. Got really cold. I was going through knee and waist deep snow. And if you're in Montana?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know what it's like to get in really deep snow. It's really challenging. So imagine one day out of Everest, and I'm so really high up, and I'm in knee and waist deep snow. And my body, after 2 hours of trying to get through a valley, is shutting down. And so we retreated. All my stuff was now soaking wet. Back out again. Now the sun started to go down, and my body was exhausted. I was really high up, and I was going through a steep incline, and I was shutting down basically, and I had to go. And I kept telling myself, I'm full of energy. This is easy. I'm full of energy. And my body was just getting sucked. The temperature was dropping really fast, and I was depleted. So it got to this point where I started to lean on rocks and just try to take little breaks. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to take a little break here and there. And I got closer and closer to sleeping. And it came to the point where I heard my own voice say, it's okay, Matt, just go to sleep. You'll be fine. But it wasn't my internal dialogue. It was like my own voice outside of me saying it to myself. And so it was a very strange experience. And that's when I knew I was in trouble, and essentially just went into autopilot, ended up trekking for another 2 hours. I don't know how I made it, ended up getting airlifted the next day. But the only reason I share that is because in those experiences, it shows like consciousness is a very interesting thing. And I think that we are connected to spirit or the universe, our nature, in some way. And we have to surrender to that. I had to surrender at Everest. I had to surrender when the gun was in my head. I have to surrender on a daily basis because we really don't know what's going on in a lot of things. We don't know how the trees work. You can study trees your whole life and know a very little bit. But when we can understand that we are connected to a greater force that is, I think, inherently good, and to learn to listen to ourselves, we can, when we're in those experiences, you have to trust, right? If I was supposed to be dead, I'd be dead. All of these different ways, but there is something there. And I think that it's important to know that we are always connected to that, Yeah.
And it almost makes me think sometimes death is a form of deprogramming so that we have another experience to get closer to nature, closer to spirit, and more embodied as we advance our human vessel, or, understand the capabilities of it, since we've been so shut down on a DNA level. And yeah, my background's actually in wilderness expedition related stuff. And so not quite to the degree that you've done it, but I can relate to some of those moments of just having to let go. And it just proves how much the ego can get in the way, or the lower mind, and the things that, we've been taught. And I didn't mean to bring up reptilians, because I know maybe not everybody, or I'm not, trying to assume anything about what you think or believe, but just, the darker forces that are really trying to, limit us, and to see people really pushing the envelope on a multidimensional level, really bringing it into the body like you have, is huge. And so that kind of ties into this book, Zen Athlete. Like, when did you start getting inspired to write it? And how did you kind of bring in all the different ingredients and pieces? Was it, I don't want to set you up for a complicated answer, but however you feel like answering, just your process behind this great book that you've written, and any other material that you've done that you want to bring in too.
Sure. Well, yeah, thanks for that. So the book, it came as a result from when I started to coach snowboarding in Whistler, and I was learning to get better. And I came from Ontario, and when you go to Whistler snowboarding, the level of ability is so much higher. So these jumps are 60, 70 feet long. And I was like, oh my God, this is nuts. And so I was still studying sports psychology, peak performance, any astral projection, anything out there that could give me an edge I was looking for. And in coaching snowboarding, I realized that people didn't even know the basics that I learned in martial arts from when I was a kid: how to clear your mind, how to visualize, how to understand that you need to monitor what you say to yourself. It makes a very big difference what is going on between your two ears before you go to try to do something. And even on a daily basis, we have something like 70 to 90,000 thoughts a day. And apparently like 80% of those are repeated. And our minds, the way that they work is that they are designed to keep us safe. So we need to look for danger. Now that can keep us in a fear state. And then, to your point of, whatever's going on here, when I go down the rabbit holes, I get to reptilians, I get to all kinds of craziness, but before I got to even that, what I realized was the psychology that they use. That's something that you don't need to be a conspiracy theorist or, go down these. You can look at psychology, simple psychology, and what is being projected in our media, what's being projected in our news, what's being projected in our movies. And so if I say, don't imagine the American flag, well, you have to do that. One of the ways to imprint something is repetition. There's all these different ways to program the subconscious mind. So I was really curious about those techniques. How could I use them for good? How could I use them for myself? And so I started to teach this to snowboarders. I, traveled the world teaching high-level snowboarders for a while. And then when I started traveling and going to all these different spaces, I wanted to make this something so simple and easy to understand that anybody could apply it, and only the stuff that worked. When I read a book about something that's supposed to teach me something, I better know how to do it. So if I'm reading a psychology book, I better know how to, be 10% more happy. I better be able to meditate a little bit better. I better have an understanding. So the book is basically the best tools and processes that I have learned for manifesting a goal. And so that's usually to be a better athlete. And again, rather than doing Zen life, which probably would have been a lot smarter, the idea is, you could use this for any goal. It's how to create a goal and use all the flow state, biohacking, whatever you want to call it, to achieve that thing. So the idea is you just need to get clear on what that goal is. So it doesn't matter if it's a trick or a sport or a business or music or anything, the exact same process applies. And it's really about process, because if you're going to train to do a triathlon, it's different training than weight training. If you want to start a business selling muffins, it's going to be different than if you want to do a software for service company. There's going to be similarities, but once you have that really ideal process, and it's all a mental process, every single thing can be figured out. I don't care if it's resources, if it's know-how, if it's things. If you have the right mindset and perspective, you can literally achieve any goal that you want. But the biggest problem is people don't know how to find a goal that's inspiring to them. And so to that point, I created something a while ago to address this. It's called a heart hypnosis experience or heart journey experience. And the reason why I created this is because I'd ask a lot of people that I was coaching, a lot of people that I'm working with, what would you do if money didn't matter? What do you want to do? What would you do if you could do anything? And they, first of all, never ask themselves that question. And second of all, the way that our minds work is it needs to keep us alive. And so for us to be alive, we need to be able to eat. And for us to eat, we need to be able to make money. So if I ask you that question and your mind can't figure out how you're going to make money from it, it's going to distort the answer to a certain degree. So you don't kill yourself because it thinks you're going to do that, because the consciousness is trying to help you, just like you look both ways across the street so you don't get smoked by a car. It's helpful. But when this person was so analytical, I just did a guided meditation for them. And I realized that of all the stuff that I've learned, this is the best because it's experiential. I can hypnotize you into your heart with a guided meditation. It's nothing mystical or fancy. It's just a great process. Then ask the same questions, because your heart knows it's eternal. It's not worried that you're going to die, and it knows who you are better than your mind does, because it has all your experiences, your hopes, your dreams, all those things that get stuffed down from society, from programming, from, even people who are trying to help because your parents want you to succeed too. So they don't want you to do that, right? So it allows you to just boil it up, bring it up and view it. And then when you find a direction, it's usually not like an end goal. It's like, oh, well, when I have 500 podcasts and I'm making this amount of money and I have this house and there's 54,000 books sold and I've written 10 books, then my life is complete. Like, I don't know what it's going to be, but I can be confident in the direction I'm going. So most people don't know if they're going north, east, south, or west. Start with, even if you're going north, that could be like, oh, arts. I like music and art. Oh, I like music and art and, social justice. Oh, cool. Then it starts to refine as you move that direction. So if you can get to a crystal clear direction, you're going to be up for all those challenges and road bumps that come along the way, because everybody has them and they're constant and failure is constant. But if you know where you're going and you're inspired by your own design, you're going to have the willingness to move forward and overcome those obstacles. And so if you couple that with a really great process, that's super ideal, because if you're going towards meaning, it's going to be a pain in the ass. And this, you're living this, you're doing this, and you realize all of this stuff comes up. It's not an easy road.
Right. It's so important though, because the failure thing can keep people so stuck and create such a negative self-talk and projection on oneself. And with this mindset, failure is the catalyst for strength and perseverance and tenacity. But without the passion and inspiration, it's so difficult. And just locating that piece. And for some, it's going to take a little bit, perhaps, just to feel things around, just have some life experience. But it's huge. And the reason I think it's so good that you focus on the athlete part, because that's one of the hardest parts to gain mastery over, is the physical body. And the athlete part, I think that word can actually be incorporated into all these different areas. And with that mindset, no matter what the area is, I think it creates a motivation and desire to face the challenges and reach goals. And even before I saw your book, I was using it as a metaphor. Look at your life like an athlete looks at, like I said before, an obstacle course or a difficult trail to, double black diamond, whatever. Because that challenge is much more welcomed and it's exciting. And overcoming these, obstacles might have to be the first stage for some people, just to even be able to hear their own thoughts. But, I just love it. I'm so excited.
I wanted to say the one thing though that you said I think is really important is just, you start with where you are, right? Like you're always going to be growing. There's always going to be another level. So wherever you are in the process, even if you've never asked that question, you start asking that question. It's always continuous process. So just, being kind to yourself wherever you are in the process, start asking more meaningful questions, and then start taking a bit of action, because until you take that action, you don't know what you want yet. Right? You're going to do a bunch of stuff that you don't want to discover what you do want. I didn't think that I was going to do podcasts. I didn't think I was going to write a book. I never really thought about those things. And then they started to happen because they started to make sense. I was asking myself these questions continuously. I was trying new experiences. Some of them I enjoyed, some of I didn't, doing every course and book I could possibly do, and I still do. Some of them I find really helpful, some of them maybe not so much. And so in doing that, I can more refine the direction. Like with every experience, if you're like, paddling a canoe in an infinite ocean, you don't know where you're going, you're making a stroke in a direction, and it's creating momentum. And there is this bigger stream that you're completely unaware of, like the currents of the ocean. Then through your direction, all of a sudden, you're getting picked up to the current to take you to the place that you want to go. And you're like, yes, this is where it is, but it takes a bit of time. And the premium thing, like for Zen Athlete, and again, athlete's a great metaphor, but it could be Zen life. When I boiled it down to as basic as I could get it, you teach a kid to do a basketball shot. First thing is to teach them to clear their mind. A human being who can clear their mind and stop the train of thought, and a human being who cannot, is a fundamental shift in the quality of your consciousness. The second thing is to visualize that shot going in. When you learn this visualization, positive internal dialogue, you realize that you influence your reality. That's very important. Another fundamental shift in the quality of your consciousness and the quality of your life. The third thing is that you miss the shot. And then, oh no, you missed the next shot, right? What's the most powerful and positive perspective that you can have in that situation? You might intend and do your best, but you still may fail. So it's not so much as to what happens in your environment. It's how you respond to what happens in your life that's going to really affect the quality of your life. And then the final piece, and this is the Zen idea, which is probably the most challenging, is how can you be whole, happy, fulfilled, kind, just joyous wherever you are in the process, whether you're 8 years old learning whatever you're learning, you're 15 years old in high school, you're 23 and you're going to university, because it always seems this next thing. Oh, when I'm out of university, then I'll be free and happy. Oh, and I got this job. When I get this next raise, oh, you know what? I'm not so passionate. When I figure out what I want to do, okay, now I know what I want to do. Okay, when the business gets to this number, okay, now the business is at this number. But then when I get that house, because okay, now I got this house, there's always going to be another thing in the process. Always, always, always. And so if you can learn to be just joyous and content and happy and just grateful for what you have, even if it's so little at that time, then you're smashing it, because you have a good process. You're doing it from a fulfilled state. You need nothing more, no knowledge, no object outside of you to have that fulfillment from where you are in the process. And you get to enjoy paddling on the ocean, observing all this crazy stuff that happens through life.
Absolutely. And that's just the nowness. And that's where we can consolidate our power. And you just really just make it feel like, or it actually is what you're expressing, like we're lucid dreaming in this reality. It's just the same way when we gain a little bit of control, when we're in a dimension where more is possible, you're helping to open up, and you live a life that opens up to the ability to not have that barrier, which we are kind of discussing in the beginning. And with that barrier gone, mind over matter is a real thing. It's an absolutely real thing. And in this ascension window, I feel like the energies are a lot more available to just really advance ourselves. It's so incredible. So when did you start to explore topics related to disclosure? When did you kind of was it always sort of there, and then this information came in and it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, when did the podcast inspiration, or just your opening to ideas about disclosure, was it an experience you had? You did mention some encounter, and you were going to tell a story. So maybe you could just take us a little bit into that and whatever you want to share about what you've experienced or seen.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's a big old can of worms. And I'll kind of, so when I was, I would say around 15, I was really looking in how the world worked, right? I was always reading stuff on consciousness and things like that. But I was also looking, because I only had 2 channels growing up. And one of those channels was global or whatever. And they always had the kids in Africa and Ethiopia starving. And I was like, how is this happening? I don't understand how I can be living here, understand what I know about the world and the Western economy, but we can't afford rice for these people. Like, they shouldn't be starving to death. You know what I mean? Can't some people get together and sort that out? And so I started to go down the rabbit hole of these different things. And I learned about Edward Bernays, The Century of the Self is a great documentary. Zeitgeist 1 and 2, great documentaries. Things like that are kind of exploring these ideas and then I started to realize it's a system. Oh crap, this is a system. And, and then I go down all the rabbit holes that I could find, and it's like, they get wild. And it would always hit aliens and ETs. And at the time, when I was 15 to 18 or 19, I was already crazy enough for my friends. All right. I was all the concepts of conspiracy stuff. They already think I'm a nutball. So I am not going to ETs. I'm like, you know what? I'm stopping there. Right. I'm nuts enough. I am not going to open this door. We're just going to leave that shut for now. So until flash forward, like when I'm, I don't know, I think I was like 20 something, 26 maybe. I kept looking at it, but I wasn't seriously investigating the ancient civilizations or that phenomena. It kept coming up. I was like, yeah, maybe. I'd actually did an ayahuasca ceremony, got my mind smashed. And the first question that I asked one of my buddies was like, oh, so Keith, aliens? He's like, yep. I was like, 100%? He's like, 100%. I was like, oh my God. And then he tells me a story about like UFOs coming one day to his house. And so that's when I opened up and started to look at it seriously. I started to investigate it seriously. I wanted to start to navigate that. And so I started navigating that. And after my travels, this was before I traveled, then I traveled, and I only had 2 friends. Forever, I didn't even have one friend I could talk to about this stuff. Finally, at like 28, I had a second friend I could have these discussions with. And we would have these great discussions about different topics: spirituality, kindness, what's going on in the world, possibility, consciousness, Zen, happiness, all these ideas. And and I was like, we should record these things, and share them with our friends and people. And eventually it got to the point where I was like, look, I'm just going to have a conversation with my friend. It's episode 1. And that's what it was. It was a conversation with him. And I said, hey buddy, do you mind if I like pretend this is an interview? So I did. And, it was a good one, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I don't know why I chose him, but it was Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. Because I think I was reading the 4 agreements, and I was like, Don Miguel Ruiz is going to be too hard to get. I don't have a podcast. I'm going to go for his son because it's a Toltec lineage. It's passed down. So he has the exact same lineage because I understood the culture. And he said yes. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I did that and started to explore that. And then I just flushed it out and had the intention to find people who were exploring these topics. Find people who wanted to talk about things that I felt that are important, that are helpful, that hold some sort of knowledge that can help me, and it could also help other people in that exploration. And part of those, going down the rabbit hole of like the disclosure, it kept coming up. It kept coming up, and what's happening on our planet? Why is it like this? Okay, well, we know about the banks and corporations. That's pretty easy to figure out. But, then you start to go into secret societies. Are they good? Are they bad? At one day I'm like, oh, Freemasons are evil. Then I'm like, oh, wait, I think that they're okay. And I was like, oh crap, I know one and he's a nice guy. I'm like, what, like, are they, and then you see Bohemian Grove and it's just like, okay, is there like that looks like it's happening, I think. And that's, what are they doing there? So, anyway, talking to the elders, they had really fascinating conversations. So UFO, I've had several UFO experiences. Probably the craziest one, I'll share too. So I told you about him, David Lombert. I saw him speak at a festival, and he just said some mind-blowing stuff. I didn't know who he was. And so he said he needed help. He talked about being on the side of a mountain for the first 26 years of his life, learning from over 600 elders, math, physics, engineering, chemistry, biology. I'm like, what? And so I come up to him after. I was like, hey, will you, I'll help you, because he needed help. I was like, I'll help any way I can. So he's like, come watch me speak again. So I watched him speak again because he was close by, speaking again, more mind-blowing stuff. Then I was like, hey, you should come on my podcast. People need to know this. He comes on my podcast. He's never spoken about this stuff publicly or on a show before. So does the podcast, 3.5 hours long. And and he says mind-blowing stuff. Talks about Atlantis being a spaceship in his culture. He said there's 22 here. It's a 20,000-year history. Talks about all kinds of wild stuff. Talks about technologies. Talks about these different things. And so after the interview, I call him up right away and I say, is what you're saying true? Are you a Native American storyteller? Because a lot of his points come back to being kind and compassionate, right? And so he goes, I am a storyteller, but those stories I told you are from my history. Those are true. Those are what I was taught. This is our oral history. It's like, okay, holy shit. And he goes, I could put you in a tunnel and bring you to where I am, because he talked about these weird technologies and things like that. And I was like, really? And he goes, yes. Do you need me to? And I didn't know if it was like some sort of spiritual reward, like I needed to have faith to get the spiritual reward, and I definitely wanted it. So my bright idea is, I thought about it for a second. I go, you don't have to, but it'd be really cool if you did. And so he goes, okay, look at the sky tonight. You may or may not see something. And so I was at Arco Santi, which is between Phoenix and Sedona. You might know where it is, because I'm sure you've been to Sedona. And I was at the lower level eating pizza. I completely forgot about it. I started to walk up to where I was, and there was a star like 50 meters or 50 feet above Arco Santi, a really, really bright star. And you got to give reality a chance first. So I'm like, maybe it's my buddy's drone. Maybe it's some sort of thing. So I run up the hill. I'm going up this hill, and I'm watching it the whole time. And then it starts to move back. At the top, there's a big field, and the field to the right, field to the left, and the highway is about a mile out. So it had crossed the highway, and it's this super bright star. And I'm just staring at it, and I'm like, huh. And so my bright idea is to start ohming, because how do you communicate with an orb? You ohm, I guess. I give that a try, but it worked. It started to get closer. So this North Star gets closer and closer and closer and closer, keeps coming. It gets to probably a street lamp away, 50 feet up, 50 feet away, like super close. And as I'm looking at this thing, it's not a physical object. It's not making any sound. it is like a star, but it looks like the Freemason symbol with the triangle and the really thin layers. And so it goes from a triangle to more like a circle, triangle, circle in the middle, and it's emitting thin light. At this point, after listening to what he had said, I thought I was maybe going to go for a ride. And so I got real afraid. I was like, uh-oh, what am I missing? And I got super afraid. And then it started to back up and it was there. And I have this on YouTube. You can go to UFO/orb Arcosanti. You will find it. It is a crappy video because I took it at night with my phone. It sucks, but you can look at it. And that's,
Wow.
my friend Rob was there and I really wished he was there. So then it stops and gets closer. I was staring at this thing for 40 minutes. I got bored looking at it because I didn't know what it was, but I was like, it's close enough that I can see that it's an object, but it's not making sound. It's definitely not a drone. And the light coming off is super gnarly. So after about 40 minutes, I got bored and I tried to like, okay, now the next step is let's see if I can communicate with it telepathically. So I try to communicate with it telepathically, close my eyes, it's behind me, open them, doesn't work. Another 5-10 minutes, I close my eyes and look back, doesn't work. The third time I close my eyes, after 10 minutes, I look back and it was the brightest star in the sky. It was at least twice as bright as the North Star and it just vanished and it was in the same spot. And so that's one of the UFO experiences that I've had, and I've had a few others. I think I've caught some on film that are always the lights, and the lights could be anything, right? Like I've just seen really weird ones that flicker out. I have another one on YouTube as well when I was by myself, and there's this weird light in the sky. And basically, long story short, it started to go across the river. I was in Washington, and I noticed it. And then I went back after a fire. It started crossing the river and I started to film it again. And I'm just looking at it, trying to figure out what the hell this thing is. And I'm in the bush in Washington, like I'm nowhere. And I look at my phone and this light is blasting all over the screen like this. But to my eye, it's making a straight line. And so you got to look at my YouTube videos. I can't remember which one that is. Probably just a UFO something. But when we froze it, it basically from a stationary position is bouncing in all of these different spots. And again, I thought I was going for a ride. So I ran away and it took all my courage to go back down. And I used 2 cameras. It actually ended up coming back, staying stationary, and it looked like a bee buzzing, but on the video, it is bouncing all over the place. It's like crazy, like boom, boom, boom. And my buddy is a videographer. We were able to slow it down and it splits like a cell divide. It goes from 1 to 2. And you can, again, see this on YouTube. I don't know what it was. I thought it could, maybe it's government stuff that I don't know. Maybe it's
on your channel, YouTube, you're saying?
Yeah, it's on my channel, YouTube. Yeah. So I'll send you the link so you can link to that. So those were the 2 physical ones. And then if you want, I can share you one more story. It's a pretty crazy story, but it's long. It's probably like 5-10 minutes. And so it's up to you, but it's one of the gnarlier ones.
We're good. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. You have any questions about those ones?
No. Yeah, that's really fascinating. Yeah. I knew to set aside extra time. No, I don't even have a question. Just go for it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, and actually, you answered the question I was going to ask. Kind of what you felt the source of it was, and you said it might be this, it might be that, but.
Yeah. And that's and you look at this too, because there's so much stuff out there on ufology and history and, everything out there. It's hard to like know for sure. And you're as close to the pulse as a lot of people can get. And even when you're on my show, you're like, look, this is my interpretation right now, because when I get more information, I can know more, right? I'm taking the research that I've done, the experiencing that I have, and then presenting an idea. And I'm not telling you this is hard fact, and that's what I love about how you present, because a lot of people present it as hard fact. And at first I just believed everybody who said everything, but then I started interviewing so many different people, going to so many different events, looking like, now how can I correlate? That's why I asked, hey, what is your view on this? Yeah. Oh, you know what? I can correlate what Laura was saying about this with what David said about Eisenhower, with what this person said. I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? And so as we share what we know, and we're open to new information, we can get a more clear idea on what is going on and how we can work together. So
really
I
well
appreciate
put. Totally.
Yeah, I really appreciate how you do that. So I'm grateful for that. And thanks for your work. So this is the craziest experience that I have ever had in my life. I was at a festival, and I went to Envision Festival in Costa Rica. I arrive and I get on the bus and I meet this very tall man. He's a nice guy, and we chatted, and I didn't see him. We just made a really great connection, and I didn't see him at all uh, until a couple of days later. So on Saturday night, I'd see him, and I think we met on Thursday. It's like, oh, hey man, like, how's it going? You know? And he's playing this flute, and he's got like, it looks like the craziest flute from nature, like handcrafted by an indigenous person. He's got this super serious look on his face, and he goes, the universe gifted me this flute. When I started playing it, I got taken to a cave with 9 beings. That's like, what? That's like, oh my God. It's like how? What? And he's just sitting there. And as I would ask him a question, because what make me think he's telling the truth, because maybe he's just super high on some sort of psychedelic, right? And then it's in that land. It could be, I don't know, it still could be, I'm not so sure. But when I'd ask him a question, like, number one, he had a physical flute. Number two, when I would ask him a question, he would process how he would answer that, because you could see how he was still processing what had just happened to him. So he said he got taken to a cave with like 9 beings, and they started giving him information about the universe. I was like, oh my goodness, like, what did they tell you? He's like, well, we went to the moon, and it showed me how there's like some bases there, and there's a civilization, and some of these beings want to help humanity. Some of them are not, so they're a bit more destructive. They don't care about us. And he started to share some stuff. I can't remember exactly what he was saying to me. I wish I'd recorded it, because your memory gets foggy as you go along, and I should have wrote down everything he said. But I was like, well, what else happened? And so he kind of shared like some of the things that he had in his experience, and what they had told him. I can try to figure out if there's any other like really useful information, but the bottom line was that they were here, that they are here now. It's like the main thing was that they wanted him to know that they're here. And then that they're a part of this, and that it's a lot bigger than he could even understand, and just wanted to show him that, and showed him a few other things. But so I was like, holy crap, I think he was being genuine. I think like he actually had that experience. So the next day I said, I want an experience with God and ETs in a way, God and or ETs, which could be one and the same, who knows these days, that it's undeniable, that I know for sure that it's from one of those two things. That's what I wanted. And so I set this intention, and I left my tent, and I started walking, and I, do like a walking meditation. I think that, a lot of the information that I've learned is like through visualization, it's got to be 13 seconds. Also, a prayer needs to be spoken. I learned that from indigenous people, or written, needs to be written or spoken out loud, and then go into the visual creative part, because you're combining a physical and a metaphysical, right? And then that visualization holds firm your intention and what you're vibrating. So I did a nice walk, probably like, a minute or 2 minute walk of no thought, holding this intention, which is really good for me. I only can last like 15 seconds, a minute, because then mind starts doing its thing, right? So I was like, yeah, that was good. So it was the last day of the festival. I wanted to get some face paint. I think I'm going to face paint and go dancing. That's what I think I'm going to do. So fine. This girl is sitting there, and she has face paints, and I say, hey, do you mind if will you paint my face for me? She's like, yeah, sure, sit down. So she's like, we'll do a trade. I was like, yeah, sure, we'll do a trade. So she paints my face, and when I go to a festival, I bring a tuning fork, and I do like, I don't know, like little activations. And so what I get a person to do is visualize what it is that they really want in their life. So I help them create an idea, right, that's really empowering for them, their most ideal life. Then I get them to hold that visualization. I take this tuning fork, and I ding it like on their third eye and stuff like that. And I go through, and I get them to use will. And I really love, there's a book by Yogananda called Scientific Affirmations. And the premise of the book is the reason why you say an affirmation and it doesn't happen is because you aren't putting any spiritual will behind it, meaning there's no energy. If we are an electromagnetic universe, you need to have a pulse of energy. That is why it's very important to take care of the body, so that energy system is working. And so I use the example of like, I want a life that I'm passionate about. Let's say, I want 100,000 YouTube subscribers so I can spread the message of positivity, planetary change, and impact as many people in as big and a profound way as possible. Now, if I say that, and like, it's like 0.001 on the energetic scale. But if you imagine like a mother who has a child underneath a car, and that child is like screaming because they're going to die, she's not going to think about how much she deadlifts or squats. She's going to put every ounce of who and what she is and all metaphysical powers in moving that car for kid, right? That's going to be a whole nother thing. So the way we use affirmations, the way we think about our goals, we're just going over to the car and like using a pinky, right? So if you could add that type of willpower, and that's essentially what he's saying in his book, you need to add your will, you're asserting yourself here as a creator on this planet. You have to do that with your affirmations. So that's kind of the spiel I give people, and I get them to will it into their consciousness and really feel that goal. And I go through and I ding them and then bring them through the process. So we go do that. She does her thing, and she goes into a kind of like a meditative state. Usually it takes them like a minute or two to pop out of the experience. And so she then is in a meditative state. So I was like, I'm not just going to walk away from this girl. I'll wait. She'll pop out and we'll talk. And that's how it always goes. So she goes into this meditative state. I kind of get ready. I go into a meditative state, but immediately as I started meditating, I drop into an incredibly deep meditation, just a very, very deep meditation, and which is uncommon. Like I meditate a lot, but I don't just drop into a super meditative state. It's just usually I'm just observing my mind be a maniac with, sometimes periods of nice no thought. It happens, but it's not like this. So I open my eyes, she's still meditating, she's waiting for me. I close my eyes again, I drop again. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't stay here. I come out a couple minutes later and I look and she's still there. So I'm like, okay, you know what, I want to go into this meditative state. I don't know how long she's going to be. So what I'll do is I'll hold her hands, and that way she can just give me a little tug. When she's done, I'll come out, hold her hands, drop into the meditation, and drop into the deepest, gnarliest meditation of my life by far. Immediately I'm in there for like 10 or like 15 minutes. I don't know, because in that space, there's no time and there's no space. It's very profound, and I'm in it. So after about 10, 15 minutes, I hear something. And so I think that she's moved. I open my eyes, and this is what I see. I'm stuck in like a yogi mind. Like if you're like really, like you see the yogis with the crazy eyes, like, so I'm open my eyes, but I'm that energy, peaceful state or oneness state is fully what's going on in my consciousness. I look at her and we're face to face, and all I can see is jeans and shoes, walk to right where we are, right, and get a side angle. And then they take a photo. I see a flash. All I see is a flash. I see shoes and a flash. And then it goes over my left shoulder, whoever it is, whatever it is, and drops a Polaroid on, and it lands on her dress. And so my thought at this point is, that's going to be a cool photo. Right on, man. I'm all festivaled up. I look great. I got face paint on. This is going to be a dope photo. Facebook's going to love this one. So I start looking at this photo, and it's black. It's just a black, one of those ones that come up like what do you call it? Insta photo or whatever it is. It starts coming up, and I'm watching, and then I'm starting to see the image, and I'm like, what the hell? Start looking. It starts to take shape. The image comes up from nothing. And what I saw was Thoth as a physical being, not a hieroglyph. Like he was super jacked. He had a bird head, like as a physical, like as if he were real, and you took a photo of him in 3D. It looked like a basement in Egypt. I could see and I had recently been in Egypt, so I'll get to this part too, but I was in Egypt recently with the Resonant Science Foundation with technology doing weird stuff. So they had the big, huge boulder or stone slabs, right? You could see that thing. He was standing with a girl. There was a girl on a lifted chair. It was a weird chair because he was like probably 9 or 12 feet or something huge, right? But she looked tiny. So it had this modified huge chair that a woman was sitting in. And you know how in those hieroglyphs he has that pen that he's holding? Well, he's got that freaking pen, but that's exactly what I look like with the thing that I had, that little vibrational device. I put it exactly on people's third eye, exactly like that. And so he's holding the pen on this woman's third eye in a physical photo in what I could maybe deduce as the basement of like a pyramid, because it looked really dark and it was those colors. So my mind just goes, what? Can I swear? what the F?
Yeah.
Like that, I was like, and then I just kept repeating that, what the F, what the F, like, what the F, what the F. I was like, oh my God, like what the hell is like, and I didn't think like, I was just processing. Who knows what the hell was happening, right? So I'm looking at this photo, just being like, oh my God, so this is what I'm thinking. I want to get the photo and try to figure this out, right? But this meditation, amazing consciousness space, whatever it is too amazing. If you've experienced it, which I'm sure that you have by the look, is like whenever you have that, whether it's a meditation or some experience, it could be in nature. It's just like, oh my, it's a place of no time, no space, infinite connection. It's rare. It's a glimpse. It's wonderful. I wish it was my everyday experience, but it's not. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to dip back into this experience because that picture is going to stay right here, and then I'll figure out what the hell that is all about. So hold her hands. I'm holding her hands the whole time. I dip back into the experience. Another 10 or 15 minutes goes by. I don't really know. Then I feel her wiggling around. She opens her eyes, right? Oh, well, I open my eyes first, which is the problem because I look like that crazy yogi. I'm stuck in this oneness state and I got my eyes open. So she opens her eyes to me, looking right at her pupils like a crazy man. It's stuck in the oneness state. So she must have been like, what the heck? So she looks at me and she goes, this little half star is like, huh. And then she's like, huh, like confused. And then she's like, and like just doesn't know how to take it. I'm stuck, my eyes I'm stuck. And then she looks down. She looks down and then I'm still stuck, just looking right at her. And then she starts moving around, right? And then she starts collecting her stuff and she's moving pretty quickly. And I'm kind of like processing what's going on. Then she gets up and I realize she's going to go away. So she's frantically gotten all of her stuff and she gets up to go away. She's leaving. And I'm like, this can't happen. So now I'm trying to get back to my body to be like, yo, you got to stop her. Like this can't happen. So finally, as she's taking 2-3 steps away, I'm just go, please wait, please wait. That's all I can muster up. And so she just walks. Now I'm thinking, oh crap, do I got to go chase her? Because I don't want to be a guy. Like, I don't know how she's going to react, right? We're in a festival. I'm going after this girl. They don't know the story. So I was like, oh, I got to go track her down. This is too crazy. So I go to get up. My right leg is completely numb and useless. I can't do anything with it. It's just dumb. And so I take 1 step. It's numb. 2 steps. I was like, I can't walk. So I sit down and I'm just like, what the flying F is going on? Like, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on? 2 minutes, not even like 20 seconds later, something like that. She starts, I notice she is walking back a beeline at me. She walks right up to me, super quick. She's not looking at me. She's looking all around me going, where's the photo? Where's the photo? And I said, I don't have the photo. What did you see? Where's the photo? I don't have it. Please look at me. No, where's the photo? And she's like, I was like, I promise I don't have it. What did you see? She goes, empty your pockets. So I empty my pocket. I empty my other pocket. I said, please look at me. What did you see? And she basically looks at me really quick, just gives me one glance and then just walks away. And so then I'm like, again, what the hell is going on? So now I know that she saw something. I don't know if she saw the same thing. She could have saw something completely different. I don't know. I wanted to verify. I hope that this podcast or one of them gets to her one day and I can know what the heck she saw. I can see why she freaked out. I've done a lot of weird things and I was freaked out. I was like, what the hell is going on?
It just disappeared.
No. So it was a physical photo. She left. And yeah, I was very much in my body. So then I go, and this is how I know also, because then I look at this tree in front of me and I was like, this is like the Buddha tree because it's got this perfect, the branches go up that it's going to hug your back perfectly. I was like, that thing, I'm supposed to go meditate there. I'm able to take 1 step. I park my back into the back of this awesome tree in the middle of a festival, and I get launched into this oneness consciousness state from midnight to 6 a.m. In the middle, I thought that was the rest of my life, was like this tree. I was like like, I don't know if you want to call it astral traveling or whatever. Like I was like, I understood the wind in a new way and how it carries information. I don't know if this is true, but this is like an insight that I had. But I was like, oh, because the wind was going. It's like, oh, it takes all the information of all the forest and then takes it across the ocean, and it tells everybody else over there what happens over there. I was like, oh, that's cool. And so I was stuck, observe all of these insights and things,
Hours.
and I could still knew when people were stopping in front of me and talking, and I knew they were there, and I knew I was safe, and I was there both. You know what I mean? Even when my friends would come by, I knew, and one of my friends like, no, leave them. And I was at the same time experiencing all this stuff. And then, you know, like I got stuck, and I literally thought, like, I'm never going to move, that this is it, that this is the end of my life. I was like, oh, that's cool. I've made it. Like, this is what it is. And so this experience unfolds, and I don't know how long it's for, until at one point, all of a sudden, my right leg started just aching like crazy. I had severe pain coming down my leg. Then I slowly start to get out of it, and I realize I can't stay here forever, unfortunately, as much as I wanted to, and adjust myself. And that's the thing. I adjusted myself like once, maybe like 4 hours in. I was stayed in the exact same position. When I meditate, like when I meditate a lot, one year I meditated an hour a day for pretty much a year. And I've done, 4 months at a time where I meditate a lot. And, now the practice goes off and on, but I think it is like riding a bike. You should do it, and you should do at least a minimal, but I've done it very, very hard, like to max it out. And even when I was meditating an hour a day, my body would get sore. That was one of the hard things. After about 30 minutes, my back could get sore and different things. I didn't move my body for hours. It stayed in the exact same position, which was nuts. So eventually I come out, my leg is killing me. I'm trying to figure out what the heck was going on. There was luckily a fire close by. One of my friends was there. I talked to her about the experience, and it's just like, I don't know what just happened to me. Like, that is crazy. Then I reflect back on what my life had just been, because I was trying to make sense of this. I was recently in Egypt with the Resonance Science Foundation. We brought the Arc crystals, and what I learned about those crystals is, they supposed to create a little energy field, but I had 64 of them behind my head. So they built a grid in the King's Chamber with one on my third eye, with the group going Om, and the whole trip was about how like Egypt is an initiation. And so I went into each pyramid with this technology behind my head, doing these processes, and a lot of that had to do with Thoth. And if you look at the Emerald Tablets, when I shared a friend, she sent me the link to the Emerald Tablets where it talks about like an initiation. Now, I don't know if this is initiation. I don't know if it was just my imagination. I can't tell, but I know that it was physical, that she saw the photo too, and it was a physical photo, and that she was there, and my face was painted, and so she was a real person, I'm pretty sure. And so that was the craziest experience that I've ever had after I had asked it. And at the end of the day, after having this experience, it does sound awesome and multidimensional in saying it, but after I go about my daily life, I can't access those states. I can't call Thoth on the phone, although I wish I could. What it really boils down to is understanding that consciousness is a very interesting experience, that there is no limit. Like we are more expansive than just what we think in our own minds, that we are connected to bigger things. And that when we learn to be kind to ourselves and our environments, and have a practice in, like, I'm a seeker, like I've been to 30 countries. Like they say in the Bible, like, ask and it is given, and knock and the door is open, or the answers are there if you're willing. You don't need to do any of those things that I've done. You don't need to travel. You don't need to go find a guru. You need to honestly ask spirit, wherever you were from, whatever you are doing, that is enough. You're spiritual enough as you are to have that experience, to get your own understanding. It might not be as crazy as that. I don't know why, that's years and years. And I had one wild one. I was like, thank you. But then it's a glimpse. It's like a little nugget for me to continue to do all that challenging work and all those things that I had to do in faith over and over and over and over again. When I described to my more logical friends all the things that I have to do to be able to get to those spaces, to do those things, all these leaps of faith, they wouldn't even consider it. And it's because I'm honestly trying to connect to something spiritual or good or God or whatever. And I think that that's the force that is helping, that's bringing this experience. And it was just a little glimpse of saying, hey, you're not crazy for wanting to do this. You're not, crazy for trying these things. And I think that was just a wink, you know what I mean? It's not permanent, but it was a wink. And I think that wherever anyone is in the process, they have an earnest seeking to know spirit or God or nature or force in that way, that then that door is open. But then you have to walk. It's not like what I've learned from the indigenous and I've learned from the studies is it's not a biohack, quick fix, go to your singing bowls and crystals and now it's happened. It's no, let's see you walk it for a bit. We're going to watch you walk it. Then over time, we can start to share these things with you.
Yeah. And that's really just going into these higher earth energies, which to me is just, higher possibilities of what the physical is capable of and how consciousness can expand into it all while maintaining that physical connection. That's so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. But in the end, she was asking you where the photograph was, whatever became of all that.
I think she took it. And then I don't know if she dropped it, if like the universe took it or some sort of magic took it. Like the only, and interesting too, like, I like to give this example, but David Lombard, one of my teachers, is a magician, and he's taught me to look at all these different things from different eyes. And so the only thing that I could think of as a possibility is somebody had a camera that had the ability to take a photo that was prefabricated. So then it came up like that. But one, why the hell would it be Thoth with the thing on a girl on a chair? And two, how was this high energy experience happening? Those are the two things that I can't correlate,
It goes beyond whatever physical laws humans have grown accustomed to. The physics are completely different in these other dimensions. And when I look at like UFOs blipping in and out and kind of, I just see like that experience. You're just in so many places all at once, and that, and then the Egypt trip. I mean, it's a glimpse for sure, and a wink that is really opening up into a reality I think people are going to get much more acquainted with. I'm certainly very, I don't want to say the word homesick like it's not already here, but I feel, people's resistance towards it, create the block that sort of still defines this reality, and it's the illusion of limitation. And I just love your journey because it's just like, it just, I don't want to say laughs at it, but nothing stops you. It's, and to manifest these experiences on all these different levels. And then I got the vision of you on that snowboard, just defying the limits of what one thinks is possible. There's really no stopping you. And this is so important for people to get in touch with, particularly with whatever ascension symptoms, whatever thing they might've inherited or wherever they think their biggest blocks are, and whatever brings them, suffering or fear or hopelessness. These are really, really powerful messages. And I just encourage people to, read your book because it applies to everybody. And I just want to ask just another question. I want to respect your time too, if you don't mind, just maybe.
No, I'm here, and I really appreciate you letting me share those stories because they're long. Like, there's a lot of information.
No, I know.
So thanks for listening.
Yeah, and there's no way to really assess it. So I hope whatever I'm saying after the fact feels resonant with you. Sometimes it's just hard to articulate things that are so beyond what the human language gives us. But man, you explain it all really well. I'm not so sure about how I reiterated in return, but not reiterated, but how I sort of, what I gain from it. It just, whew. So
I think you did good, because when I tell this story to my friends, I know when they have like no response, like their appropriate response is just like, what the heck, if you believe what the person's saying, right? Because it's just like, hold on, I don't even know what to say about that. So I appreciate the honest listening, because a lot of my friends are just like, I don't even know what to tell you about it.
Yeah, it's definitely like something to sit with and process for a bit, which I definitely will be doing after this show. So I know you offer courses and training, and just maybe to speak to, a person, and I know we've already kind of addressed it, but any more to add to it? What can a person who feels maybe untalented, out of shape, begin to step into more of the Zen athlete mindset? And I don't want you to feel like you have to repeat anything you already shared, but maybe that can tie into some of the courses you share where people can, get a hold of this and feel like even if they're starting from stage one, maybe living a sedentary lifestyle that wants to change that, wants to really become inspired again. How can people get more in touch with this? And what would be like a beginning point to help them get the engine ignited, I guess you could say?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. And I think that anybody, there are many people like that. So the first thing to understand is that wherever you are, if you feel like it's not enough or you want to change, that's great. That's the beginning of it, is the desire to change, right? And so the first thing is just to be easy on yourself, to be kind to yourself as much as you can. And then the next step is you just need to change something. You need to write it down. So that's the first step. You just got to write it down. And so let's say if you're sedentary, right? Like, I break it down in different ways, but do one thing physical, like even if it's just walking 15 minutes a day, you might not think that that's a big deal, but it is a big deal. Then maybe you start to run each day, but it has to start with something. And that start is the hardest thing. And it just starts with the right questions, right? So writing down your goals. What are some goals that you have physically? What are some goals that you have mentally? You could look at, your mental, emotional state. Like, how do you feel throughout the day? What are some feelings you'd like to enjoy more? Write down a list of your passions. So journaling is just a tip. Journal every single day. One of the common themes that I've learned in my podcast and through the studies of elite performers is that they journal, that they ask themselves high quality questions, and then they keep a track of that thing, and they're always writing things down. So, you could start your day by just 5 things that you're grateful for and 5 things that you want to call in. Ask spirit for help or pray, right? So write it down as like, spirit, I'd like some direction and figuring out where I could move with my life, that I can make an income and be passionate and feel like I'm living my life purpose. It starts with that question because you don't know. And it always evolves with each and every day. So then the next thing that I would say is, start to listen to positive materials. My podcast, there's 300 episodes. There's amazing podcasts out there. You just need to start doing that. Eliminate the negativity. So on Facebook, you can curate your feed. Anybody just, that's super negative, don't think of it as personal, but in Buddhism, they call it mental nutriments. If like you didn't know me, right? And you came to my house and you walk in my front door and the first thing you see is like a real person that's beheaded, and then around like a photo of that, not an actual person, but an actual person would be even more dramatic. But then all the walls are pictures of death and like, crazy stuff. And then I'm listening to this crazy music and like, this is my home, or it could be a bar or whatever. You'd be like, geez, like this is intense, right? But you come into my home and you maybe like the first picture is just something beautiful, like, the art behind me or something, and it resonates, and there's other beautiful things, and it's very soft. Like you go to a spa, for example, right? It creates a different feeling. Well, your senses are taking in these different things called mental nutriments in Buddhism. And it's, what are you ingesting? You know what I mean? What are your eyes focused on? Are you watching, murder shows all day? And it's funny because I call them like it's a murder genre on television. It's a whole genre, so much murder going on. And there's one that's just like, I think the title of it is just murder. And it's just like, geez. And so that's what's getting in your consciousness. So you want to just start to curate things on something you prefer.
Yeah, it's no different from food that we put in our body. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you can start with all these different things, and you want to curate just small changes. Don't worry about, going from, where you are to exactly where you want to go. One small change, if you're struggling with diet, see if you can eliminate one of those things or substitute, right? Or add something on. So if you're always eating potato chips, maybe you're just like, you know what, I'm going to eat the same bag of potato chips and I'm going to add a carrot. So what you want to do is break the pattern. It's called a pattern interrupt in hypnosis. It's what I did to the guy with the gun because he did not know how to process that, right? So there's many ways you can pattern interrupt. You can also pattern interrupt by driving a new way home. Seems stupid, but the more I think about it, the more it makes sense, is that we get locked into patterns. And a crazy story about this. I was telling this to one of my sister's bosses, who's a very high up at Steve Nash Gyms, a very nice lady, but corporate and kicking butt, very high level position. And so my sister said she was super stressed out and wanted to chat. So I decided to chat with her, and I told her the same thing. I was like, you know what, just like start taking new ways home, because the way the neurology works is once you find that habit, like if it's negativity or whatever, or let's say self-limitation, any external stimulus, if that neural net's so big, is going to be a reason for self-hate, right? So you're walking down the street and somebody looks at you, but then because the map is so big, that look fires off all the neurons on self-limitation and self anxiety, right? Any external thing, because the map is so big. So when you change the map or you change the experiences, it starts to loosen those maps, those neural connections that you don't want. So anyway, I tell her to take a new way home. She goes, "It's so crazy you say that. I moved last year and I've been going the same way home from when I lived in the house before, even if it was through traffic." So she moved locations, but continued the old habitual habit of driving that way to work, even at a detriment of driving for another 20 to 30 minutes. And that's how powerful those things can be. So you got to break up your pattern. Just go the long way. Always just go a different way. Go a different way to the store, because it's always new, it's fresh, and it's harder for us to get into that groove. If you get home every day and you sit on the couch and you just do that thing, you're getting more and more into the groove. So I hope there were some practical things to help people. But to summarize, write it down. Pray and ask for help. Do something different. See if you can look at the things that you'd like to eliminate and some things that you would add. Write down things that you're passionate about and take some action. It's going to require a bit of courage. You have to go do something different. You actually have to do something. The action is king. You can think about it. So the first action is writing it down. Then you see it. That's massive. Then see if you can do something physically, and just start with little bits over time, a little bit every day, rather than, on Saturday, you're going to go to the gym for 8 hours. You'd want to walk 10 minutes a day. That'd be huge. Walking is meditation, every single day, just go for 15-minute walk. That counts. Totally
and it just keeps
counts.
building and building, and really you're helping people break the trance, and it's a form of deprogramming. When we think of mind control, social engineering, and early childhood conditioning and ancestral patterns, these are the practical ways to break that up and bring in the authentic, and bring in the passion, and bring in the inspiration, and create massive life changes. And this is everything right now. So how can, gosh, I could talk to you for a long time. But knowing that time's a ticking here, and I'd love to do this again sometime, but and wait, before we end, is there anything that I wasn't able to, anything we haven't shared that you feel is just right there that you want to share with people that I haven't asked you?
Yeah, well, I've very much enjoyed this, and I thank you so much for your listening and your work. And I invite all of the listeners to please support Laura and her work and her initiatives. And this is a lot of work to do these things. So I'm just grateful to have the opportunity to speak to you, and thank you for your great interview. One of the things that I just like to say, it is like, for me, I enjoy processes and things that work. I wanted to, if I'm going to be a better athlete and I read your book, I want to be a better athlete. If I want to learn meditation, right, I want it to work and be able to do those things. So the best things that I've seen so far for helping someone just get into an empowered state of like finding life meaning is the heart journey. It's not because I made it, it's because I'm looking for things. And I think meditation and hypnosis is such a powerful tool, and it's very easy. Like in Zen Athlete, I teach you how to do it. It's just so muddled, right? And just make it so easy. So I invite people to have that experience, and it's for free. If they go mattbelair.com/masters-of-flow, you can go through that experience, and it just hypnotizes you into your heart, asks you a series of questions, so you begin to move in that momentum and see what inspires you. The feeling is what connects you there. What feels good, what feels right. And when you are figuring out your life purpose, your goal, your contribution, that's when the whole forest and the whole universe is moving to support you, because your being who you are helps everybody and everything. The universe wants that for you. What's required of you is to think about it and take action towards that, and have the courage to do that. So that process is the best process. Also, there's the passion test is good too, but this puts you in a meditative state or hypnotic state, which is paramount, because you've got to shut off the mind that's trying to keep you safe, and it's telling you all the reasons. It's like you want to see a new scenario and you're trying to do it from this filter that you can't change, right? So you have to be able to change the filter, and that's what meditation hypnosis is for. So they can get that, and they can even get the Zen Athlete book for free there to have the ebook linked up, because I know that these things are empowering, and if you just apply a few of them, you will be able to see the changes, because nothing in there it doesn't work. It's all the stuff that actually works and has proven results over time. I didn't make them up. I researched them and applied all of them, and all of the stuff I apply, like I try weird stuff, and so, I'll do the weird stuff. And if it works, I'm like, all right, let's do it. And if it doesn't, then I'm like, for me, that one didn't work, but maybe for you it will. But I'll recommend this one because I know for myself, it worked for me. And I was able to repeat that, replicate that for this person, and this person who also confirmed.
Wow, gosh. Well, I'll make sure I have all your links, your YouTube channel, website, all this information in the descriptor of this show. And what a tremendous being that you are, and just incredible work you do for yourself and on the benefit of the highest good of humanity. And what a blessing it is to be able to spend this time with you and encourage all of us to be the best of ourselves. It's just awesome. And thanks for spending time with me today. And I look forward
Thank you so much.
to being more familiar with you. You're a tremendous force of nature, and thank you again. And I know we'll be in touch. So have a great rest of your evening.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay, bye everybody.